Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Artichoke Dip, the solo RPG gamer. My name is Rob, and in this video, I want to talk about blades in the dark. Okay, so I have been recently looking for some new RPG games, kind of branching out, and I'm always looking for something new. And um, you know, after a while, you kind of do. Um, I'm not gonna say get burned out, but you want something more than D&D, and you want something than medieval fantasy, and you want to branch out and go into a different direction, whether that be, sci-fi or horror or what have you. So I have been combing the internet and looking around, and I came across this, and I bought this on Amazon, not knowing what to expect, and I sat down and I read it, and then I played it and I loved it. Um, this is a completely different game system than what I am used to playing, and I played my first solo adventure in it. It's still very new to me. I got enough of the rules underneath my belt to understand and play it and have fun with it, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So before we get into the meat of this the meat and potatoes, I should say, of this video, if you enjoy this video, please give me a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel to get my latest videos. Okay, with that out of the way, and Blades in the Dark, what is it? Well, let me just read the setting to you, and I think you're going to get a good idea of where this game system is. So this game setting takes place in a city called Duskwall. It's the industrial in its development. Imagine a world much like ours during the second industrial revolution of the 1870s. There are trains, steamboats, printing presses, simple electrical technology, carriages, and black smog of chimney smoke everywhere. Duskwall is something like a mashup of Venice, London, and Prague. It's crowded with rows of houses, twisting streets, and crisscrossed with hundreds of little waterways and bridges. The city is also a fantasy. The world is in perpetual darkness and haunted by ghosts, a result of the cataclysm that shattered the sun and broke the gates of death 1,000 years ago. The cities of the empire are each encircled by crackling lightning towers to keep out the vengeful spirits and twisted horrors of the Deathlands. To power these massive barriers, the titanic metal ships of the Leviathan hunters are sent out from Duskwall to extract ectoplasmic blood from massive demonic terrors upon the ink-darked void seas. You're in a haunted Victorian-era city, trapped inside a wall of lightning powered by demon blood. Okay, now let's talk about Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark, you take on a character of what they call a scoundrel. And of course, this city is overrun with crime and murder, and of course, the supernatural. Ghosts are just a normal occurrence, and the majority of people there see them, know they're there. Some can even communicate with them. So it's just a way of life, if you will, in Duskwall. Now, this system is a silhouetted system. If you don't know what that means, silhouetted means it only uses your regular six-sided dice to use it. And when you roll in Blades of Darkness, a 6 is a critical success, a 5 or 6 is a success, and anything from a 1 through 3, it's not that successful. So, now, let's get into the character classes, or how they like to call them, scoundrels. And to your surprise, when I explain this to you, this game is a little bit different than most RPGs out there. And I like it. And I'm going to explain a lot about this game. And I think for those of you out there that may be like me, maybe you're looking for something a little different to break up the monotony, maybe something new and interesting into your life. And I have to say, solo, how is this game solo? This game is excellent solo. Very excellent solo. The one thing I can tell you is that this is the one game system that I do have that I play that is all theater of the mind, and I don't use miniatures or terrain or anything like that. And it's fun. Okay, so in our characters, they give you a wide variety of characters to choose from. You can be a cutter. Cutters are good at winning fights and violence with intimidation. Or you can be a hound. Hounds are good at tracking things down and also long distance combat. Leech. Leeches are good at using alchemy and wrecking stuff with sabotage. A lurk. Lurks are good at sneaking around and breaking into places. A slide. Slides are good at social situations and subterfuge. A spider. Spiders are good at masterminding maneuvers. A whisperer. Whisperers are good at magical stuff and dealing with ghosts. So, now, where this game is a little bit different than most RPGs you play, the character, you take on that persona and go into the fantasy world to build your character up. Where this game is cool, and I really, really, really like it, is the game uses what's called a crew. Your character is part of a crew. Now, the first thing in character, before you even develop your character, is you develop a crew. And believe it or not, your characters operate out of the crew. Now, there's a lot of cool things about a crew. Because the crew is immortal and the crew lasts forever. What do I mean by the crew? The crew is the organization in which your characters belong to and operate out of. Now, a very cool thing about this, and this idea, is you create the crew. And you can create as many characters as you want to put into your crew. Now, that really, really gives you a lot of unlimited possibilities because you don't have to use all your characters at once. You can use characters that you want for whatever situation you want to play them in. And the nice thing is, if your character dies, you can always replace it with a fresh crew member to put into your crew, but your crew always stays the same. Now, your crew starts out, and as you create the crew, you also have to come up with an idea of to where their stronghold or secret bases that they operate out of. And from there, you move on. Now, to give you an example, my crew, I called it the Order of the New Moon. And the reputation is a very professional one. Their lair is an abandoned watchtower in the dark recesses of the Mist Shore Park. It's always covered in a foggy mist, and well known to be haunted for the large amount of murders that have happened there. Now, what my crew does, my crew sets out to find ancient artifacts, and they acquire these, well, not by any legal means, and then of course they sell them to the highest bidder. Now, in my crew of the New Moon, I have used 3 characters. One who is a shadow. I'm sorry, not a shadow. Jeez, oh, Pete's. A lurk, and his alias is Shadow. And the lurk is much like a thief, if you want to think about it that way. The second one is a whisperer, and her name is Llewellyn Stoke, and her alias is Misty. And the third one I made is a hound. His name is Kenny Xenojost, and his alias, he is Reaper. And he was the one that founded the crew, and I even went a bit further, and in his background, Kenny is the third son of Ulrich, the demon hunter. He learned at a young age to fight demons and occultic knowledge. His father was betrayed and murdered by an evil cult of Zophar by the way of Valerius. His heritage, Kenny is a descendant of the ancient bloodline of the Xeno Knights Order, the first order of the ancient book and cross. Ancient hook and cross, I'm sorry. A holy order to protect the written words of the gods and their holy sites. The Xeno Knights were the largest and most influential order in the world from 1392 BC to 1794 BC. And those are my characters within my crew, to give you an idea. Now, this book gives you a great wealth of information and ideas to create. Now, as with every character that you choose, which I love about this game, and where it really works out very well solo, is each character in its description has a certain, how do I put this, opportunities that they can draw from, which gives you endless ideas for gaming and gaming sessions. I'm going to read a couple of here from the assassin opportunities right here. 1. Two feuding noble houses put out the call for a hired killers, which you could answer. A grieving noble lord or lady wants revenge for a child killed in a legal duel. A crime boss is facing serious charges and the inspector can't be bought. Kill the witnesses. 3 warring street gangs put out for a call of hired killers. Street gangs. Yeah, street gangs. So let's get into that. So in the world of Blades in the Dark, as the setting goes, there are a multitude of cities and different districts inside the city. Now, inside of those districts of the city, there are gangs, and a lot of them. Now, most gangs do not appreciate your gang being on their turf and vice versa, which also causes gang wars. Now, to add even more into that, there is, which would be considered their police force, called the Bluecoats. And the Bluecoats, at that point, patrol the city. Now, one interesting thing about this game, and that's really interesting. So, as you play through the scenario, and you are rolling, whether it's combat or perhaps you're trying to do a special ability, there are 3 different categories in which your rolls fall. The first one is a controlled roll. Your character knows what he's doing. He's done this a lot of times, and he can do it pretty easy. The second one is risky. Maybe the situation is a little sticky, and perhaps things didn't go quite the way he or she wanted to, and now you're going to have to, how do I put this, really throw caution to the wind to try to get this accomplished. And the third one is desperate. Desperate would be you found your target, you're getting ready to assassinate them, and the Bluecoats have kicked in the door. So you're going to have to quickly assassinate your target and try to escape out the window to escape capture. Now, with that in mind, keeping that in mind with your action roll, as I said, this is a D6 system. A 6 is a critical success, a 5 or 6 is a success, and a 1 through 3 is a failure. So, if you fail, or if you think there's a possibility that you may fail, this game system gives you the opportunity to make a deal with the devil. And at that point, you accept any, well, how do we put this? Bad things that may happen to your character. But in doing so, you get an extra die to the pool to be able to throw in the dice. Now, if that hasn't intrigued you enough yet, another thing that I love about this game system that is just really, really cool and adds stuff into it even more is your character has what's called stress and a trauma table. So every time you roll the dice, if you fail, you take stress. And as your stress accumulates up, bad things start to happen. If you're trying a physical maneuver, let's say you're trying to jump 2 buildings and you fail and you fall down. Now, at that point you take trauma. Now you can only take so much trauma because as you take trauma, you start getting, at that point, negatives towards your rolls. Up to the point you die. Now, if you die, it doesn't end there. You can either say, yes, the character's dead, or you can continue on as a ghost in blades of darkness. Now, you can also push yourself. And pushing your character will give you 2 stress. So, you could accomplish your task. But at some point, how much stress you really want to take? How far do you really want to push yourself? The other thing I find very cool about this game system that I really love that they use, and I'm going to start using this in all my games, and it's so simple how it works, and it adds so much into the game. So, in the games of Blade and Darkness, every time you encounter a street gang, every time perhaps you pull off a job, there's a percentage that either the Bluecoats or possibly that rival street gang may get word of your, how do I put this, your wrongdoings, or perhaps you're taking money out of their pocket. I guess the point I'm trying to get at is everything you do has a ripple effect in the game system. Now, they use, which are called these clocks. And there's clock counters for everything, which are very simple. Using a piece of notebook paper and a pencil, you draw a pie chart. Now, I'm going to use the Bluecoats as an example. Let's say your crew pulled a heist, and at that point, the Bluecoats are going to investigate that. Because you obviously pulled the heist, you would shade in one of these. Now, as you go along and what you do, every time you do it, another one is shaded in until they're all filled up. Once they are filled up, at that point, you have an encounter with the Bluecoats. And it's not much you can do about it. Same goes for the street gangs. And there are loads of street gangs that operate within this city. Now, they do give you a wealth of information about the street gangs. And they give you a load of description about streets, buildings, NPCs, motives, everything. Towards the back of this book, they give you so many randomized tables that this is just endless possibilities and fun to have for hours. Now, of course, the way that their tables work is it works on a percentile system, rolling 2d6 dice, and you would decide one is your 10, one is your ones, one is your 10s. So rolling a 2 and a 1 would be a 21. And at that point, 21, this NPC would be shrewd. His interest would be architecture and furnishings, and his quirks would be blind to flaws in friends, allies, and families, etc. And it even breaks it down into the NPC's goals, their preferred methods, their professions, and on and on and on. It's a very cool system. I love this system a lot. I have been playing it a lot. It's one of them I told you I wanted to talk to you guys about and explain to you. As far as role-playing systems go, I mean, this is, if you ask me, there should be more out there like this. There really should be. And perhaps there are. Maybe I just haven't discovered them yet. But as far as this one goes, I am really, really head over heels for this game system. So, now, there are a few other things that come into play with this game, and I'm going to explain them, that are very, very interesting. So, as your character takes on stress and wounds, they have to have downtime. And when they have downtime, they go and venture into whatever their vices are, whether it be gambling, drug use, maybe bizarre ritual occult practices, what have you. And as they do these things, stress points start to come off because it's their downtime, which comes in with the idea of the crew. You could have a large crew, you could have a crew with a large amount of players in there, so as your players get injured, they could go into downtime and heal as you use your other characters. Now, oh man, this is just, it's such a cool game. I'm sorry guys, I gotta focus on the video. Okay. So within your roles and everything you do, I'm not going to say everything, but it does affect the game. You have what's called a fortune roll. Now, before you pull a job, before you even, I should say, set out on your adventure, whether it's to get an artifact, perhaps summon an ancient demon, kill a noble figure, so on and so forth, because you got to remember, you're playing a scoundrel. You're an outlaw. You're not a virtuous, good paladin out there to defend good and the weak of the land. You're out there to murder, steal, rape, burn. You're out there to do some pretty dark stuff and to make money off of it. But before you start out on that adventure, a fortune roll has to be made. And with the fortune roll, some things can go good or they can go bad. So rolling a 1d6, a 1 through 3, you're going to get a bad result. Something bad is going to happen along the way with your adventure. A 4 through a 5, it's a mixed result. Your job, you're going to be able to pull that job off and it's going to work, but there might be some hiccups along the way. A 6, it's a good result. Just like the A-team, you'll love it when a good plan comes together. Now, there's also investigations, and as you plan this little expedition to get whatever your characters want to acquire, you have to investigate it. You might have to question. You might have to find some people on the street and rough them up a little bit to get the answers you're looking for. While all of this you're trying to evade the bluecoats, and either you're trying to incite a gang war, or perhaps evade one because maybe your crew is not that large yet to handle a larger gang. Either of which. Now, that is the basic overview of Blades in the Dark and what Blades in the Dark has to offer. There are so many possibilities to this game that, and it's very simple, very simple. So when you read through this, just like I did, and as it explains in the rules, you have to play it a couple of times before everything will click and come together. And that's okay. For me, I read through it, I understood it, and it seemed, just excuse me one moment here. There we go. It seemed like, I understood it, but it was kind of like, And in the book, it leaves a website address to go to for the character creation and crew creation. And once I pulled it up and I was actually to look at it, everything, oh yeah! And I was off playing and having a great time with it. So, let's get down to the nuts and bolts of the character. And I printed these off for me as I make the characters to just speed things up a bit. You don't have to do that. You can always use notebook paper and a pencil. But I would suggest, if you do pick the game up and decide to play it, to go to their website and actually print these off for yourself and have them. So, on your character sheet, as you can see, you got the basics, your name, your alias. Up here, you got your stress, your trauma factors. Over here, you do have a healing clock, the project you're currently working on, any armor, then of course notes, anything you would have. If you had a special weapon, you had special armor, so on and so forth. But what I really want to talk about are these right here, which are your abilities. Now your abilities, you have 3 ability, how do I put this? 3 ability groups that you use for your character inside this world. The first one is Insight, and of those you have Hunt, Study, Survey, and Tinker. The second one is Prowess, and that is your Finesse, your Prowl, your Skirmish, which would be your Battle, your Wreck. Your third one is your Resolve, which is your Attune, Command, Consort, and Sway. Now, when you choose a character, it already comes with dots assigned, and then you are given an additional 4 dots to assign them wherever you would like. Now, for each dot you have within your ability, you get 1d6 added to that roll. Now, if you don't have any dots, you can still use the ability. The problem is, for each dice you want to roll, you take a stress. Now, regardless if you succeed or you critically fail, you still take a stress. And if you're in a desperate situation, you can always take stress and then make a deal with the devil to get the bonus die. Very interesting game, guys. It's a very well laid out book. I love it. I absolutely love everything about this game system. I can't say enough about it. And, I mean, as you can tell, I plan on making a lot of characters. Here's the binder. Printed me off some cool artwork to put on there for it. And let's get into this a little bit more. I'm going to show you some of the maps and such. And it gives you a good brief overview. This is where my crew starts out in the 6 towers. And this is the district in which they operate. Now, they recently pulled a job in District 4. And let me get back to that, because I just lost my page. It's a brand new book. I really haven't worn in the spine yet, so... But give it time. Alright, let's get back to the 6 towers. Sorry guys, don't mean to bore you or anything. Oh my goodness. Where in the heck did... Ah, here we go, 6 towers. So, here are the 4 major points in the solo RPG I'm playing with this game system. One is the Rowan House, which is one of the last of the original 6 towers. This antique building resembles an ancient castle from history books. Complete with a moat, drawbridge, and arrow slits, the powerful Rowan family rules their holdings from within the fortress, rarely venturing beyond the security of its thick stone walls. The Mist Shore Park, The dark and overgrown space overlooks the eastern branch of the river Dusk and the Deathlands beyond. In old folk ballads, young lovers who could not be together would commit suicide in the park. Whether the truth of it, and the park is certainly haunted now. Skurlock Manor. The Skurlock family came to Duskwall centuries ago and once was a great force in the city before some curse of calamity befell their line. This tumble-down manor house and tangle of vines is all that remains of their original fortune. It's said that a young nephew or cousin still resides there, but Lord Skurlock himself has moved on to finer abodes. And of course, 4, Arms of the Weeping Lady. This grand building, formerly an opera house, is now a soup kitchen and bunkhouse for the destitute. Run by the charity of the Weeping Lady, locals use this landmark as the demarcation between the districts of Carter Hall and the 6 towers. Okay, so you're probably wondering, why did I use the 6 towers? Well, within the 6 towers, there's a lot of natural spiritual energy. And considering my characters deal with ancient artifacts with the supernatural, it's a good place for them to operate out of. And my first one was a hint about an ancient artifact that was on Earth when they were doing some road construction in the District 4 area. And of course, they went in, they were able to get the artifact, they were able to evade the Bluecoats. Luckily, by the die roll, by 1 die roll, I was able to avoid them. And they were able to hide in the shadows of an old abandoned ruined building where the metal stairways and spiral staircases were still intact, and make it back to their lair. Where, unbeknownst to them, how the fortune roll went and the other tables, their, how do I put this, client that wants the artifact is also a vampire. Oh, vampire. I forgot to bring that up. So vampires exist within inside this world. Now there are the Wardens, and the Wardens is an organization that operate within the city. When somebody dies, they collect their body and cremate it. Because the way they look at it, after 3 days, what can wind up happening is that that person will come back as a vengeful spirit if their body is left. So it is illegal to be a vampire, because in the game system, the way it explains it, a vampire actually is a vengeful spirit that takes possession of a living human until that human passes, and then it fully takes possession of its physical form and operates within Duskwall. Now, the vampires have to be kind of a secret society. And, unbeknownst to my characters, their client is a vampire that's made the negotiation for the artifact that's for a larger ring of vampires that operates within secret a Duskwall. Guys, this is an awesome game system, and I have had a lot of fun with this. A lot of fun. It's one of those I could sit here and I could talk for 8 hours about this game system to you guys, but until you experience yourself, you really won't know. Now, of course, I explained to you about the blue coats, the vampires, the ghosts, and there's demons. And the demons are pretty, well, they're demons, and most of them are, how do I put this, attuned to a certain element, and are pretty rude in the game system and very hard to contend with. But at certain times, certain things you do, well, whether intentional by your character or unintentional, could possibly summon forth a demon. And at that point, your characters would have to face it. Now, whether they'll survive or not is a completely different story. And the other thing I wanted to talk about are the gangs. They give you tons of information and different gang factions in here. And of course, they have their faction clocks. In this one, the Hive, in their faction clock, just as I showed you, that they use with the little pie graph here, their clocks that it uses throughout the entire game system. So if you have a run-in with the Hive, they dominate the contraband market. So if you sell any type of contraband that may, how do I put this, step on their toes, you get a strike. After 8 strikes, they're coming to war with you, possibly on your turf. Now, they also are trying to avenge Rorik's murder. And Rorik, I am taking it, would have to be somebody that operated within their crew or their guild that was murdered, obviously. It only makes sense. And that clock has a 6. So, everything you do or an NPC you meet could have a possible connection to Rorik. And every time you do that, upon the 6th time, the clock is full. Guess what? They're coming to talk to you about the murder. So as you can see, the game system really is set up great for solo. I love it solo. I love playing this. It's, like I said, a theater of the mind. You don't need miniatures, you don't need maps, you don't need any of that. They give you the maps. Everything you do in here is you roll the dice and you see how that goes. And normally with the story, it evolves with the roll of the dice. And it just keeps going and going and going and going. Now, one thing that can happen in the game that's very interesting. So let's say you create a character in your crew and your character gets caught by the blue coats. And at that point, they're sentenced to prison. Well, the game even addresses that. You make a die roll. And while your character's in prison, one of 3 things can happen. A, he serves his time quietly and comes out broke. Not much to show for it. 2, he goes in there and he may forge some connections, make a decent time for his stay in prison, And when he comes out, he may have a few things waiting for him to live out the rest of his life. Or the third outcome, he becomes a very influential character inside the prison, swaying power over gangs and becoming almost a legend. And when he comes out, well, he may have a nice pile of money and an abode to go to and retire for the rest of his character's life in comfort, well knowing inside he has built himself an empire that constantly replenishes his bank account. So those are the few things you can expect inside Blades in the Dark. Now I'll leave a link where you could buy this. I found this on Amazon, and it's made by Evil Hat Productions. You can go straight to their website and also purchase it from their web store. I am hoping to get some more of their products, and I hope I can do that. And I hope it works out for me, because so far, this is an excellent game system. I love it, and I can't talk enough about it, guys. I mean, I highly suggest this if you're looking for something a little different in medieval fantasy role-playing. Perhaps you're looking for something that you don't have to use miniatures or maps or movement scaling, stuff like that. You're looking for something that's a little bit more theater of the mind, a little bit more darker, with supernatural. This will be the book for you. Blades in the Dark. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you do pick up the game system, I hope you enjoy it. I would love to hear your feedback on it and some of the ideas you came up for your crews and your characters, and some of the things that you have done. Now, before I end this video, just to tell you, everything I told you about my character background, about their adventure within the Six Towers, the artifact, and all that, all came from within these pages. Everything. And it was just how the dice rolled through the tables, the way that this book works, that got me to the point I'm at now. Alright, my friends. I think we're going to end the video on that. And once again, that is Blades in the Dark.